If you've ever felt unseen or judged, take a moment to like this video or share your thoughts in the comments. Stories like this need to be heard. She thought the empty building meant safety. Just a few more minutes of cleaning, then she could finally breathe. But the moment she stepped into the hallway, something felt wrong, like eyes were watching her, judging her, waiting for her to slip. She didn't know that a single mistake, a simple human moment, was about to be twisted into something darker. And as unseen footsteps echoed behind her, she had no idea her entire future was being quietly recorded. What happened next would expose a truth her workplace never wanted anyone to see. Before anything went wrong, her days followed the same quiet rhythm. She arrived before sunrise when the building was still dark, moving from floor to floor with practiced calm. She was the cleaner who kept everything running, the one no one noticed, yet everyone relied on. She carried that weight silently, knowing her work mattered even if people rarely looked her in the eye. Most days, she kept to herself, avoiding the stares that lingered too long or the tones that shifted when she entered a room. She had learned how to navigate the subtle dismissals, the way some employees stepped around her as if she didn't belong. It wasn't new. It wasn't surprising. But it never stopped stinging. Still, she pushed through. She needed the job, needed the stability, and needed something that felt like progress. Cleaning gave her time to think, time to breathe, and time to imagine a life where she was seen as more than just the black cleaner. But lately, small things had started to feel off, doors left open when she knew she'd closed them, quiet conversations that paused when she entered, and that uneasy feeling that someone was always paying attention when she wasn't supposed to be watched. She brushed it off at first. Stress, maybe. Exhaustion, probably. Yet deep down, something told her the building wasn't as empty as it seemed. And the night everything changed, that feeling finally proved right. The night she sensed something was wrong began like any other. Quiet floors, humming lights, and long empty hallways that usually brought her peace. But as she moved her cart down the corridor, she couldn't shake the heaviness pressing on her chest, a feeling that grew stronger with every step. She tried to focus on her routine, wiping down surfaces, emptying bins, and keeping the building spotless in the way only she knew how. Yet the silence around her felt different, almost calculated, as if someone was waiting for her to make a single wrong move. It started with the storage room. She entered to restock supplies, knowing exactly how she left things earlier that afternoon. But the moment she opened the door, her eyes stopped. Boxes were shifted out of place. A mop she'd stood upright was now lying across the floor. Her name tag, which she kept clipped on the shelf, was on the ground as if someone had intentionally knocked it down. She froze, staring at the small plastic tag, feeling a chill crawl up her spine. Someone had been here. Someone had gone through her things. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, but the uneasy truth lingered. She wasn't imagining it. Someone was following her routine more closely than she ever realized. As she continued cleaning, the cameras caught her attention next. She passed them every night, tiny black domes mounted in corners, always pointed toward hallways or offices, never at her workstations. But tonight, one was angled directly toward her cart, almost as if repositioned to watch her more closely. She swallowed hard, pretending not to notice, but her hands trembled as she rearranged the supplies. Then came the whispers. She entered the break room to wipe the counters when she heard them, two voices in the hallway, hushed but sharp enough to carry. She couldn't hear every word, but she heard enough, phrases about people like her, always slipping, waiting for a mistake, and one sentence that made her blood run cold. Just keep watching, she'll mess up eventually. Her heart hammered as she stood completely still, hiding behind the half-closed door. They weren't talking about an employee who had a bad day. They were talking about her. And they weren't just watching her, they were planning for something, waiting for proof of something she wasn't even aware she was being accused of. And if you think this is intense, stay with me. Every moment ahead uncovers the full scale of what she was truly up against. Don't click away. It only gets deeper from here. The final push came an hour later. She entered the executive wing, a place she only cleaned at night when everyone else was gone. The air was colder there, heavier, as if the walls themselves held secrets. She placed her mop down, walked into the corner office, and froze. Her cleaning cloth, the one she always kept folded neatly in her cart, was lying in the middle of the desk. Right beside it sat an open drawer she had never touched, and inside the drawer, papers that looked important and confidential, placed just carelessly enough to suggest tampering. It was a setup. A trap she hadn't seen coming. And as she stood there, staring at the scene someone had carefully arranged to frame her, the sound she feared the most echoed behind her, soft, slow footsteps entering the room. Someone had followed her in. And she wasn't alone anymore. She didn't have to turn around to know who had entered the room. The air shifted, the kind of shift that came with authority, entitlement, and silent judgment. Her boss stepped closer, each footstep slow and deliberate, as if savoring the moment. She felt his presence behind her, heavy and suffocating, while the staged scene on the desk trapped her in place. It didn't matter that she had never touched the drawer. It didn't matter that she lived by routine, precision, and honesty. In his eyes, the mess before them was already her crime. He didn't speak, but she could feel the accusation in the way he crossed his arms, in the way he looked down at her as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. He had seen her enter the office. He had watched just long enough for things to look incriminating. And now, with the cameras angled the right way and the evidence neatly arranged, he had everything he needed to label her the problem she never was. Her throat tightened as fear and anger swirled inside her. She wanted to explain, to defend herself, to scream that she was being set up. But she knew the truth. Explaining wouldn't matter. Not when every assumption had already been made. Not when she stood in a room where people like her were always guilty before they were even allowed to speak. Then he stepped around her, leaning closer to the desk, pretending to discover the misplaced papers as if the scene were new to him. His expression twisted into a look of practiced disappointment, the kind reserved for people who were never given the benefit of the doubt. She felt the world tilt as he shook his head slowly, silently delivering a verdict she had no power to fight. At that moment, she realized this wasn't just about the mess on the desk. This was about control, power, and the story he wanted to tell about her. A story he could twist into anything. And as he reached for his phone, preparing to make the call that could destroy her entire future, she understood the horrifying truth. He didn't walk in to catch her, he walked in to finish what he had started. When the call was made, everything moved quickly, too quickly for someone who had done nothing wrong. Security arrived, reports were written, and every assumption leaned against her. But what her boss didn't expect was the quiet strength she carried. She didn't raise her voice, didn't panic, and didn't crumble under the weight of the accusation. Instead, she stood firm, knowing the truth had a way of surfacing even when people tried to bury it. And it did. The following days brought questions, real questions, from people who weren't supposed to care. A supervisor reviewed camera footage, noticing angles that had never been adjusted before. A coworker mentioned how often she'd seen the boss lingering after hours, watching the cleaner more than the building itself. Slowly, the carefully crafted trap began to unravel. What was meant to destroy her instead exposed something far uglier than a staged mess. In the end, she kept her job. He didn't. But the damage, the fear, the humiliation, the reminder of how easily her life could have been rewritten, stayed with her. She returned to work quieter and more guarded, carrying the weight of an experience that left a permanent mark. Because she knew the truth, it wasn't just one boss, one night, or one office. It was a system where people like her were too often doubted, targeted, or silenced before they ever had a chance to speak. Her story mattered because it wasn't rare. It was a reflection of something many face every day, being seen as guilty before being seen as human. So the question remains, not just for her workplace but for all of us. How many more lives have to be shattered by prejudice before we finally confront the truth hiding in plain sight? If you believe stories like hers need to be heard, share this video and leave a comment about what you think. And if you want more real stories exposing hidden truths, hit that subscribe button. Your support ensures these voices aren't ignored.